It started as it had appeared to have commenced any typical Saturday evening suburban tranquility, street lights glinting off well-manicured lawns and the calming hum of the neighborhood sleeping. But peace was disrupted before morning on June 14, 2025, when a man attired head to toe in the attire of a policeman appeared in a reasonably credible mock squad car to silence residents of Melissa Hortman in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. The Hortman family slept soundly in their house. In her house, her husband, Mark, was a former one-time Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives, and the two peaceful sleeping children. In minutes, that home was swept up in a horrific political assassination. Melissa Hortman, 55, was no ordinary public servant. She'd worked faithfully in the Minnesota House of Representatives since 2004, climbing the ranks to Speaker in 2019 and serving in that position up until early 2024. A renowned, brilliant thinker and staunch defender of integrity, Melissa championed liberal ideas in politics. She supported abortion right defenses in the wake of protected trans health care access, fought against environmental action, and co-sponsored free school lunch legislation. She regarded public service as a vocation, not a career, life's work. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz called her a formidable public servant whose death left an unspeakable void. The evening unfolded with ferocious accuracy. Hours later at 2 a.m., a drained suburb Champlin was also visited by its own terror when State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, both Democrats, were both fatally shot on their front porch. Both were seriously injured. They survived emergency surgery. Next door to that, the former Speaker's residence was hit next. Brooklyn Park police, already on edge from the first shooting, encountered a man leaving the house in full police uniform, even sporting a taser. Chief Mark Bruley later described the bogus vest, badge, and uniform as very similar to mine. The shooter fired at the police as they arrived. There was a wild shootout before he vanished into thin air, disappearing in the early morning fog. The police who entered the property discovered Melissa lying dead under the doormat, Mark badly injured, but would sadly die despite still working to save his life. The two children were uninjured physically, but their psychic trauma would reverberate much farther than their suburban avenue. A huge manhunt ensued, coordinated by the authorities. Inside the suspect's SUV parked in front of the Speaker's house, they uncovered a whole lot more than just ammunition. No King's flyers used in anti-Trump protest signs blanketed the passenger seat with a chilling manifesto that listed politicians, abortion rights activists, and other targets. Melissa was one of them. The message was straightforward. This was not an act of random violence. It was politically driven violence, masterminded and designed to silence democracy and chill civic voice. The threats of doing this are many. Firstly, impersonation of the police, as well advanced as it was with real costume and motor vehicle, undermines public confidence. Secondly, if police are to continue to be our guardian, citizens must have faith in their legitimacy. If murderers are so cavalier about wearing that label, any knock at the door is suspicious. Governor Walz hyperboleized tremendously in stating that such a move shakes the very foundations of our democracy. Over the next few hours, word of Melissa Hortman's murder spread like wildfire, initially in state politics, then through national media. The response was immediate and nonpartisan. American politics are more fractured than they have ever been, and yet here in this instant there were no party lines. Democrats and Republicans in Congress alike denounced the attack, but what was behind the denunciation was what stung. It was not a tragedy. It was an alarm. The killer's use of the cop impersonation wasn't merely for purposes of camouflage. It was a calculated, intentional act that stole the guns. Wherever the public is trusted in the badge, any door will be opened by the uniform. No question asked. That killer took advantage of that trust to enter his victim's space. It was not the first impersonation to cause violence, but never had there been so skillfully executed against so prominent a figure of his stature. Melissa was not solitary. She was not offending in a conventional sense. She was vibrant, assured, and popular with her constituents. And yet within her own home, unapproved and unannounced, she was a victim of political terrorism. Police discovered surveillance tape of the suspect outside her home a day earlier, having parked diagonally across the street from her house. His town car was equipped with municipal badges, a spotlight, and even police department-approved license plates. It wasn't an act of passion. It was minute by minute plotted. The killer watched police procedures, studied their look and manner, and even rehearsed the way they knock. When Melissa opened, she probably thought it was a wellness check or a routine visit. That lowered guard is what she was killed by. Why is this so perilous? Because it sets a very dark precedent. If political violence can find the front door of a leader in the middle of the suburbs of suburban Minnesota, then nothing is off limits. It's not even really about Melissa. It's a message delivered by her death to other public officials speak, and you will be next. If you are on the Senate or in the school board, the message is precise. And in a democracy, the most dangerous thing is silence out of fear. It's not a police or intellectual crisis. It's a warning about the decay of democratic customs. Politician bashing is routine, but their ubiquitous nature, particularly on social media echo chambers, is extremely hazardous. Social media move quickly to remove the congratulatory tweets, but only after they have been seen thousands of times. Extremist websites hailed the murderer as a true patriot and urged others to follow his example. That poisonous tone is no longer limited to conspiracy theorist circles, it's filtering into mainstream discourse. And most chilling is the way the killer used symbols of power. He didn't have to conduct military-style shootouts or possess advanced computer hacking skills. He just wore a uniform and pressed a doorbell. That sensitivity is frightening. It has created a new vulnerability, one that is already proving difficult for police to shield against. How do you protect yourself from someone who can steal with every visual thought one of yours? In the weeks after the attack, the FBI worked with state authorities to create a task force. Haste was a priority. Homeland Security, for the first time in years, made a special alert to government officials nationwide, warning them of impersonation tactics and urging against panic. Political leaders, many of whom had derided personal security in the past, began to second-guess practices. Some canceled town halls. Some outsourced individual protection. Some, so shaken as to be frightened, went dark on social media. Meanwhile, detectives pieced together a sinister history of the suspect. Known as Michael LaRue, 38, a retired private security guard in Wisconsin, he had no known criminal history, yet his online presence was that of another type of individual. He was publishing on all manner of radical websites on the internet, the vast majority of them anti-government conspiracy theory websites. His tweets were concerning restoring order and weeding out traitors. He had tweeted cryptic messages a few months earlier about cleansing corruption with clean hands and a badge. The worst part, he bought the body armor and equipment legally online. The fake badge was bought at a store where they sold military memorabilia. The decals for his truck were special ordered and custom printed. There was no law technically violated until he pulled out his hand and rang the bell on Melissa's door. This exception, the power to create a legitimate law enforcement disguise without challenge, was problematic. Legislators began considering new law to control the sale of police gear looking official. But would it come too late? What amplified the tension was that LaRue was not connected to Melissa Hortman in any way. He was not a constituent. He had never even met her. His assault, ironically, was motivated not by spite, but ideology urged on by hours of online radicalization. In a forum post, experts discovered a repost of a manifesto wherein he called Melissa a mouthpiece of systemic rot. He viewed her as an icon, albeit one that he felt needed to be cleansed. This is the threat the event poses. When people's leaders become symbols of political discontent, and that discontent is expressed, democracy fails. Voting constitutes but one aspect of democracy, and all of the above depend on free speech. Leadership cannot be purchased in acts of violence, or fewer will step forward to lead. And this is precisely what this assailant did. By copying the very same system that he loathed, he tried to reap the benefits of the trust of others. He didn't just want to kill a man, he wanted to kill what she stood for: government responsibility and resistance to extremism. Melissa was killed because she was outspoken, progressive, and not willing to compromise on what she stood for. In this sense, her killing wasn't political, it was warfare of ideology. The emotional damage was equally wise. Citizens asked themselves whom they could trust. Children were told not to open the door to anyone, even if he said he was the police. That kind of suspicion at the street level is difficult to undo. It spreads to the community, to the next generation, to the very essence of civic society. And that's why this is not just a murder, it's a war on the system itself. Through the weeks following the assassination, shock gave way to profound national introspection. Memorials were conducted throughout Minnesota. Thousands flooded out of the state capitol with candles in hand, not only to mourn Melissa Hortman, but to protest what she represented. The speeches were raw, emotional, and with a single unifying thread: democracy is fragile, and it is more than legislation that's needed to safeguard it, it is individuals who care. It was clear this was not a time to mourn, it was a time to act. But as the accolades rolled in, so too did the shadowy consequences. A few liberal MPs were threatened with aggressive anonymous phone calls. A few noticed suspicious cars parked at their residences. Conservative commentators began suggesting the incident in terms of conspiracy, marveling at the timing, labeling it as convenient for the Democrats, or going so far as to say that it was faked. Eccentric as they were, these were lapped up by some on the social media. And that was the source of the second wave of danger disinformation. You see, in the internet age, facts do not shape public opinion anymore, narratives do. The reality about Melissa's assassination, that it was a premeditated political murder by the hand of a radicalized man who was a self-declared policeman, was overwhelmed within hours by an avalanche of some hundreds of conspiracy theories. False flag clips with millions of hits in a matter of days. Truth-not-loving algorithms, click-loving algorithms. Meanwhile, as detectives were trying to solve an actual crime, the internet represents the narrative. That is where the threat turns nasty. For once truth is for sale, justice is no longer in view. There were arrests in the weeks following Melissa's homicide on unrelated threats made against other public figures. In Texas, a man was arrested with fake police equipment and a hit list. In Michigan, a suspect was discovered outside a judge's house stalking. These were not copycat killers. They were believers, individuals who did not think Melissa's murder was a tragedy but an inspiration. That is what happens when violence turns into ideology. And yet, in the midst of all this, there was one solid thing that happened. Melissa's younger two children, a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old, posted a video message. Mascara-covered faces, and all, they didn't cry out for vengeance. They did not yell for silence. They yelled for more democracy. If our mother did anything, she wrote to her, it's that fear only triumphs when good people lose hope. So don't get angry. Vote harder. Care for each other. It was the sort of letter that cut through all the noise and reminded everyone of what hung in the balance. Ultimately, Melissa Hortman's murder is not just a narrative about losing a life. It's a mirror. It's a reflection of where we're at as a society, how quickly symbols get demonized, how simple it is to make trust a weapon of destruction, and how democracy, all its process and institutions, still depends on the average human being making a decision to trust it. For the truth is, democracy does not perish in crisis. Democracy dissolves in quiet when attention leaves the public, when terror is screamed louder than hope, when the uniforms are transformed into costume, and when the women and men who are to lead us must go underground. Melissa was out there. She had faith in sunlight, discussion, and service. And in memory, that is what must be saved.